In this next sequence, we talk to Paul Beavis, Managing Director of Lanson International, about how Lanson goes to market in the various international markets in which it has a presence. I think you'll find particularly interesting the differences that in style and strategy that Lanson has in pursuing the French versus the UK markets and also other international markets.
Well, Lanson started back in 1760, so we're the fourth oldest, what they call international brands, or Grand Marque was the original name given to all the old houses. It's a father and son business since 1760, and pretty much even to present day we've remained very true to that. Slight blip in the 60s, the late 60s actually, where it became owned by somebody else for a short period of time, but we're fundamentally still a father and son organisation today. Lanson has been one of the first brands, if you like, to really take the international platform and try and drive distribution into international markets. And we are the only house still to have its very own clos. A clos is a vineyard right in the heart of the city of Reims. So we are intrinsically connected to Reims, and a relatively small-ish size organisation. What does that mean? We have a turnover size of about 300 million euros, fundamentally family controlled, with about 300 employees on the global scale. It's a fascinating area in the sense that vines have been planted in the region for over 2,000 years. So it was actually the Romans who first planted vineyards and vines in the Champagne region. Everything in Champagne is done by hand. The root grafting, the picking, everything is done by hand. People talk a lot about dedication to quality and investment in research and making sure that what you're producing is some of the best in the world. Champagne is quite quiet at expressing that. It really is one of these industries that just gets on with it. It's controlled by the CIVC, which is the governing body in France. And really since the late 50s, there's been a huge investment in terms of future-proofing, talking about what are the impacts on global warming for Champagne, for example. With Champagne, you need high levels of acidity. Does that mean that we'll start picking the grapes slightly earlier than normal because we need the acidity, not the sweetness in the grapes, as it were? So it's a very quietly dynamic industry, actually. And if you ever come to Champagne, you understand that this is a farming territory. People are the growers who predominantly own quite a lot of the vineyards in Champagne. They're farmers. They are trying to produce the best they can, and the power of genuine relationships in Champagne is vital. Lots of houses own their own vineyards, but not many people own enough vineyards in order to produce the grapes or get enough grapes for their production. So the people like the winemakers and the families and the longevity of generations of families selling to certain houses of their grapes is absolutely essential. The UK historically has been the first export market for a lot of houses. It's a market that's worth about 31 to 32 million bottles, and on average over the last 10 years, volumes have never really fluctuated more than between 5 and 10%, either up or down of that figure. The UK is essential to the Champagne market globally. As a matter of fact, we consume, if you look at the population of the UK, quite a lot of champagne. We have a taste for champagne. Fundamentally means that we're quite a mature market within the category. And there is a thirst for flavour profiles of champagne. People have brands that they've been affiliated with for many years. What you're starting to see now in the UK is a lot more labels come to the UK. Maybe labels that you've never heard of before. That's because people can see the importance of the UK market. And the UK is dominated by two major channels. One is the retail channel and the other is the on-trade channel, hotels and restaurants, etc. So it's getting a balance right between your distribution in both of those channels. But actually the UK, we consume a lot of champagne, we consume it sensibly, and it is a very, very key market. For us, as an organisation, it's our first export market. If you look at population numbers relatively similar to France and the UK, the volume of champagne that's consumed in France is about 130 to 140 million bottles. So what that tells you instantly is that actually a lot of people in France have been brought up with champagne. It's not such a celebratory drink, actually. It's a lot more, I'm going to use the term everyday, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. It's not something that's just drunk for pure celebrations. And there are thousands of different labels available in France. So people do have a much broader choice and much wider array of different flavours. So the problem, as we address it, is the marketplace is dominated by some very large international organisations. We had to ask ourselves, what was our genuine point of difference between ourselves and those other brands? And the reality is that we do have a genuine point of difference. That took us about 6 months to really identify. We needed to unpick the brand, understand the DNA of Lanson as an organisation. We ended up with a number of veins of gold, which gave us a true compelling story. The challenge that we faced was this methodology, and what gave us this point of difference is a term called non-malolactic fermentation. That is not a particular user-friendly style of language to explain why we're different. What we had to do was identify what this methodology was. Since 1760, Lanson has produced its champagne in the same way. We have never changed. We've been consistent with that. There are only a number of other houses who still produce the champagne in that method. This method, which is unique, is the process whereby you stop the malic acid converting into lactic acid. Malic acid is what you get in a green apple, lactic acid is what you get in milk. Well, now we delay that process by happening by chilling our champagne, our grape juice, the first pressing as it were, down to stop the two acidities coming together. What does that fundamentally mean? It means it takes us twice as long to make, it costs twice as much to make, and it means you have a unique flavour profile. That unique flavour is and has been scientifically proven to be a perfect aperitif champagne. We have researched that with the Leatherhead Food Research University to prove that there is a taste profile difference. So that's fine. We now understand why we're different. We appreciate that the language is not very friendly. So what we needed to do then was create a reason to take that to market. And the reasoning is around the aperitif moment. So Lanson is the world's perfect aperitif champagne because it gets your palate ready for food. It will enliven a jaded palate because of the freshness and the zestiness of the taste. And that's why people who love the style of wine that we produce constantly come back to Lanson. That and the marketing, the brand building that we've been doing for many years, supporting the Lanson name. So it's a combination of both. We talk about style and substance, not style over substance. And that can also therefore be translated into what's in the bottle rather than the colour of the label. So we know the role that we play in the market and for our customers, and they like the style because of the mouth-watering, refreshing taste. That's the point of difference that has an occasion-led approach. Predominantly it's been led through some very traditional methods of marketing. That's been above-the-line campaigns, but our above-the-line campaigns have not been purely lifestyle-led. They've been about the positioning of the brand, the taste message, and the occasionality to share. We believe that it's a brand that can be consumed with friends, it's a relaxed, it's an informal moments, not just those pure celebratory moments, because lifestyle is a very dangerous word, as is luxury. It means different things to different people. And to us, it's about sharing a Lanson moment with friends. And that could be anywhere, weddings, birthdays, or even the fact it's a Thursday night and you're getting close to the weekend. So it's the perfect start to us. And it's actually owning a message which resonates with customers globally, actually. It's the perfect start to a night in. It's the perfect start to a night out, for example, or a wedding, etc. And that's based on a product truth. So everything actually lines up. And the fact of the matter is, it's a genuine point. It doesn't matter how good the language is if the taste doesn't actually deliver what we say. So actually for us, it's all about how that taste profile comes across to people. So there is a core brand strategy and a message that we've executed in the UK. In the UK, we've also linked up with things like Wimbledon. So since 1977, we've been affiliated with probably the world's best tennis event. Now what that does for us, it enables us to get our brand in front of a very broad and mainstream audience. At the same point, Wimbledon is an international brand in itself. So there has been some, dare I say, sponsorship opportunities that we've been able to bring to life. But we like to say they're sponsorships with intent, because actually we can bring the Wimbledon message with champagne and strawberries and Lanson specifically on a global scale, because it's transferable. It's why we can't go and sponsor everything, because we like the events, for example. The events have to have a reason to exist. And for us, it's about the tasting message. So everything comes back to the taste. It's not just about affiliation because somebody's a superstar or a supermodel. I think that's fine if that's your approach. Our approach is to be more authentic and talk about inside the bottle. It comes back initially to say, okay, what role and what size and scale are we going to be globally? What is our aspiration on a global level? And also the cost of entry into each of these markets. There are certain markets that are easier to break into, and other markets which are really challenging. China, for example, is a very challenging market to get into, and to do it, it takes time, you've got to get it right. We will take the view of, do we own and set up our own subsidiary model, or do we work with an importer/agency model? That ultimately means we will work with an existing route to market operation, somebody who already has a number of other brands that would actually therefore represent our brand in that market. Now, both of them have benefits and disadvantages, to be honest. If you have your own subsidiary model, the cost of entry is exceptionally high, and you've got to have your own people in the marketplace. So that takes longer and it is more time consuming. We did that with the US about 3.5 years ago, and it was the right model for that market because of the scale of the US market. Some smaller markets, for example, you're better off having an importer strategy because they've got the infrastructure in place, they've got the route to market secured, they've got their client base already. Now, that does come with some disadvantages in the sense that you must have in-market presence. You must have your own people in the market to support the distributor. Otherwise, your message can get diluted 2 or 3 times over before it even hits the customer or the consumer. So there are pros and cons to both. It does come down to the appetite of the organisation and what its long-term vision is for volume aspirations and market share aspirations. It takes a lot of time, and you've got to understand the market, number one. Data and consumer insight is vital because it's understanding how people are consuming your category in the first place. You then identify where are the opportunities and are there future trends that you need to get involved in. It fundamentally comes down to having a point of difference. You either try and outspend them from an advertising and sponsorship point of view, one idea. The other one, which we've taken, is you focus on the quality of what you're producing and you focus on the points of difference. When you have a brand that has a genuine point of difference, you need to extrapolate that from the brand and bring it to life to the marketplace. What that normally means is that advertising comes second. You get in-trade marketing done properly, i.e. for us, it will be focusing on tastings, experiential campaigns. It's getting people to taste the difference and why there are taste differences within the category of champagne. One of the biggest brands or biggest branded organizations will focus less, or they choose to focus less on taste and more on lifestyle. And that's fine to an extent, but when you're coming in, you've got to know why you have that point of genuine difference. And to be fair, it cannot just be the fact that you focus more on quality and provenance, because everybody can say that. It's actually taking it down to a real basic common denominator. And in our case, it's about the taste message. And in the hotels and restaurants, where there's more engagement with the consumer and the customer, if that makes sense, i.e. the operator of the restaurant, they want to talk about the brands and they want to talk about stories. So actually, this is where the benefit of storytelling comes to life. Storytelling is really great as long as what you're giving the customer at the end of the day has a genuine taste difference. So really, we know exactly the role we play. We know how to bring it to life. It takes a long time, and you've got to do it almost outlet by outlet level. There are things like the influencer programs that you pull together. And an example, we once did what we called the Great Taste Debate, where we got some very influential people in a particular market with some key journalists, and we did a great tasting. And that was all about understanding the differences in these wines, for example. That was then executed with a trade publication. So we got the trade to understand us first, and then you bring it to life from a consumer position, which is around what's the perfect aperitif style to be drinking. So I don't think there's any shortcut to that answer. It's very hard work and it takes time. The future for the brand is to be the world's perfect aperitif champagne. That's the positioning. We've made it for 255 years in the same way. We have a mouth-watering, refreshing style that doesn't change. It's consistently award-winning, and it is the perfect start to your champagne moment.